Shall I? Yeah. Respected Professor Darrell, Professor Esai, and the other dignitaries from various countries, and my mentor, Professor Dr. Aruna. A very good morning to all of you. My topic today is on religious beliefs in mental health practice. How religion or the religious beliefs help us in our mental well-being. This is what I'm going to present on. And specifically in India, it started with India, and maybe I end up worldwide. And India is a country which is associated with spiritual traditions for thousands of years, which has been the home of some of the religions of the world like Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, Sikhism, Christianity, Zoroastrianism, etc. And it is a land where spirituality is almost a way of life, where an even illiterate farmer or housewife will surprise us with their philosophical issues of life. And religion is as old as mankind. Primitive man had primitive religions, and he worshipped the elements like the sun, earth, fire and air. Advances in civilization led to institutionalized religions. So the basic characteristics of all religions are similar. There is a firm belief of a higher, unseen, controlling power. This is what we believe, an unseen controlling power. Religion appears to be a psychological necessity for mankind, and religion, which evolved due to basic psychological need of mankind, later metamorphosed. Gradually, religious practices developed into dogmas and superstitions. Though most religions continued changing with time, many became completely fossilized. From mental health perspective, religion provides much needed guidelines which can help individuals to devise a course for their own lives. Stresses and strains as well as uncertainties of life can be tolerated more easily by the believers. However, many outmoded rituals and belief systems might inhibit positive growth and may lead to mental ill health. In spite of the presence of almost all religions in India for centuries, Hinduism continues to be the predominant religion here. To an outsider, Hinduism continues to present bewildering arrays of beliefs, customs, and code of conduct, which are often mutually contradictory. To understand Hinduism is to understand India, because in Hinduism lies the history of this subcontinent for the last 4,000 years. In early Aryan religion, there is mention of many natural deities like sun, fire and lightning, and perhaps there were no idols and worship was in open. Rig Veda also gives some account of religious hymns, and present Hinduism is a queer mixture of various influences of past as well as present. And no religion exists with such open contradictions and also so openly accepted. And Hindu accepts this paradox easily and quite happily. He believes in one God and ready to worship as many as the occasion demands. We have many gods. However, in spite of this wide diversity, there is still a fair degree of unanimity of essentials of life. So in Indian languages, there is no equivalent term to convey the meaning of the word religion. So the nearest term, what we call in Tamil, is dharma, which is not an equivalent of religion. It is a mixture of cosmic order, sacred law, and religious duty. In India's philosophy and mythology, mythology play an important role in religious teaching. In India, particularly in Hindu religion, God has a different meaning. In other religions, God is the creator and he resides outside the world where he is creator. However, in Hinduism, God lies within you and within everyone and not outside. This is beautifully expressed in opening invocation of the famous Upanishad. I would like to quote, where it is translated as, that is whole, that is whole, this is whole, from the whole emerges the whole is taken from the whole, but the whole remains. This is what the Upanishad says. So, mental health is now viewed as an essential element of our general health, well-being and quality of life. The individual value of mental health is realized by positive feelings and different individual skills and capacities that can be seen as components or consequences of good mental health. Early researchers have considered positive mental health largely from the viewpoint of life satisfaction. A low level of life satisfaction has been significantly associated with mental health problems. So life satisfaction refers generally to personal assessment of one's condition compared to an external reference standard or to one's own aspirations. So a second approach records affective reactions to daily experiences, means how does an individual responses to his day-to-day life experiences, and third screens for psychological distress. So research shows that various roles and responsibilities have contributed a lot of mental health problems, and most people want to live with better health, less disease, greater inner peace and a fuller sense of meaning, direction and affluence, but materialism has failed to bring such changes, which leads to many problems such as anxiety, depression, distress, stress, lower satisfaction, etc. So thus, religious beliefs offer great insight in the context of mental and physical health. Religious doctrines may support positive views of human nature and the self that are associated with better physical and mental health outcomes. In the same way, religious injunctions may shape interpersonal behaviors and attitude towards others in ways that emphasize a variety of positive and pro-social goals. For example, pro-social goals, you call it as interpersonal warmth, friendliness, love, compassion, harmony, tolerance and forgiveness. And that reduces the likelihood of noxious and stressful interpersonal interactions. In a systematic and comprehensive review, the impact of religion on health outcomes has been assessed. It is revealed that religious involvement and spirituality are associated with better health outcomes, including greater longevity, coping skills, health-related quality of life and less anxiety. So a study conducted at the University of California, it reads that the religiously committed had much less psychological distress than the uncommitted. So the higher level of religious attendance, the less stress suffered when adversity had to be endured. So what is mental health as per Indian tradition? So a one-line definition cannot do justice to this cultural or complex cultural concepts. There are many references in Indian philosophical texts as to what constitutes as an ideal person. Most often quoted text is from Srimad Bhagavad Gita, describing the balanced person as one who has a controlled mind, emotions and senses. For understanding the concept of mental health, perhaps more important than any one quote is the broad Hindu view of life as summed up in the well-known four ends or broad aims of life. We call it as Purusha Shastra, where it reads, the 4 points are Dharma, Kama, artha and moksha. So dharma is righteousness, virtue or religious duty. Kama refers to fulfillment of our biological needs or sensual pleasures. Artha refers to fulfillment of our social needs including material gains, acquisition of wealth and social recognition. Moksha means liberation from worldly bondage and union with ultimate reality. So these four aims highlight harmony of different dimensions in life. Kama as the biological dimension, Artha as the social dimension, and Moksha as spiritual dimension. And Dharma is the central axis around which life rotates. If one pursues Kama and Artha without Dharma, the long-term result is suffering for the individual and others around them. So righteousness is more important. This is what Hinduism says. So mental health has two dimensions: absence of mental illness and presence of a well-adjusted personality that contributes effectively to the life of the community. Ability to take responsibility for one's own actions, flexibility, high frustration tolerance, acceptance of uncertainty, involvement in activities of social interest, courage to take risks, serenity to accept the things which we cannot change, courage to change the things which we can change, the wisdom to know the difference between the above, acceptance of handicaps, tempered self-control, harmonious relationships to self, others, including nature and God, are the essential features of mental health. Spirituality is an important aspect of mental health. Even St. Augustine prayed to God. Let me quote, "O God, thou created us in thy image, in our hearts will be restless until they find their rest in thee." I unquote. Though Sigmund Freud looked upon religion as an illusion and neurosis, it was Carl Jung considered the psyche as a carrier of truth, powerfully rooted in the unconscious mind. Religion is important directly or indirectly in the etiology, diagnosis, symptomatology, treatment and prognosis of psychiatric disturbances. Lack of spirituality can interfere with interpersonal relationships, which can contribute the genesis of psychiatric disturbances. Psychiatric symptoms can have a religious content. For example, the loss of interest in religious activities is a common symptom of depression. This is what psychology says. Too much and distorted religious practices are common in schizophrenia. It is well recognized that some religious states and experiences are misdiagnosed as symptoms of psychiatric illness too. Visions and possession states are examples for this. The spiritual background of the patient will help in the diagnosis of psychiatric disturbances. They are important in the treatment of psychiatric disturbance because spiritual matters can be profitably incorporated in psychotherapy. Spirituality is important in the prognosis of psychiatric conditions too. In the spiritual perspective, a differentiation must be made between cure and healing. This is more important. Cure is the removal of symptoms, whereas healing is the healing of the whole person. So adversity often produces maturity. Hence, in psychotherapy, the patient must be helped to accept the handicap and transform the handicap to life of usefulness. So religious beliefs and practices are often contributory to the development of certain psychiatric disorders, more so as regards to obsessions, anxiety and depression. Somehow, this aspect of psychopathology has not been given due consideration. For instance, Freud observed remarkable similarity between obsessive behavior patterns and religious practices in view of their fixed, stereotyped and rigid character, their being meaningless and the anxiety that follows when specific action is not properly performed. And religion provides mechanisms for both intensifying guilt as well as alleviating it. So religion often creates guilt by setting high moral standards while on the other hand, it also provides a number of methods of alleviating guilt such as confession, prayer, charity, etc. So, the essence of psychotherapy has been present in all traditions all along. In India, it has existed in a submerged form, interwoven with social structures, social norms, in religious practices, in customs, myths and rituals. It has been included in mysticism, in yoga, in Buddhism, in Ayurveda, in Unani tradition and in allopathic traditions too. Mahabharata is the great textbook of psychopathology and Gita is a great treatise in psychotherapy. Bhagavad Gita describes various aspects of psychotherapeutic techniques through 18 chapters of self-knowledge. And Gita frees person from guilt sense in its own framework. It resolves repression, supplies energy and morale by making person dig deeper still in his own self and develop insight into its working. So religious beliefs and practices are prevalent and important to people in many countries around the world. And Carl Jung, he believed that religion helped to bring about emotional stability and resolution of mental conflicts. And a number of studies has been done in the 50s and 60s, as well recent studies report on association between religion and mental health. Even Drager, he reports that religious college students were more conforming, dependent and ego defensive than non-religious students. So ideas about relationship between religiousness and mental health have changed over the past few centuries. So mental health professionals tended to deny religious aspects of human life and often considered this dimension as either old-fashioned or pathological, predicting that it would disappear as mankind matured and developed. However, hundreds of epidemiological studies performed during the last decades have shown a different picture. Religiousness remains an important aspect of human life, and it usually has a positive association with good mental health. Even though most studies have been conducted in the United States in Christian populations in the last few years, several of the main findings have been replicated in samples from different countries and different religions. So two lines of investigation that need to be expanded are cross-cultural studies and application of these findings to clinical practice in different areas of the world. So considering that religiousness is frequent and has associations with mental health, it should be considered in research and clinical practice. The clinician who truly wishes to consider the psycho-social aspects of patient, I repeat, the clinician who truly wishes to consider the psycho-social aspects of a patient needs to assess, understand and respect one's religious beliefs like any other psychosocial dimension. So increasing our knowledge of the religious aspect of human beings will increase our capacity to honor our duty as mental health providers and as scientists in relieving suffering and helping people to live more fulfilling lives. So religious methods have often been used to treat the mentally ill. Initially, the priest was the most important counselor because he had the authority of religion along with psychological expertise. Faith and belief systems are very important constituents of psychological well-being and could be fruitfully utilized in psychotherapy too. So their usage must be carefully evaluated. Hence, psychiatrists need to study religion vis-a-vis mental health more carefully, as it is likely to increase the efficiency and acceptability of psychiatry to the masses. Finally, religion has a great influence in psychiatry, including symptoms, phenomenology and its outcome. So thus, it is evident that advancement of science and technology could not hinder the importance of spirituality. In India, healing practice for various mental and physical disorders was emerged from religiosity and spirituality. Under the British rule, it was emerged with Western method of healing, and after the independence, under the influence of rapid advancement. So in India, I repeat again, healing practice for various mental and physical disorders emerged from religiosity and spirituality. So religious beliefs can provide support through the following ways: enhancing acceptance, endurance and resilience. They generate peace, self-confidence, purpose, forgiveness to the individual's own failures, self-giving and positive self-image. On the other hand, they can bring guilt, doubts, anxiety and depression through an enhanced self-criticism. So positive religious coping involves behaviors such as trying to find a lesson from God in the stressing event, doing what one can do and leave the rest in God's hands. Thank you.
Thank you. So we leave it in God's hands. Anybody would like to ask a question? Yes, Robert?
Yes, thank you, Professor. We've been using spirituality in many ways, but in Japan, in the WHO used to be one of the spirituality. Still, we have a difficulty to understand. How would you describe those who do not understand the spirituality? But you may understand that, especially of course. Okay. But those who have various religion and also maybe scientific understanding, maybe get some imagination of spirituality, but not only of your side understanding, but also in general understanding. How would you describe spirituality?
Spirituality, okay. I guess the Japanese people are also highly spiritual.
For me, yes.
Yes, yeah. That is how I have understood the Japanese culture and the Japanese people too, because they are also highly spiritual. You are into Buddhism, right? Yeah. But do you mean to say about the understanding spirituality, or an atheist? If he is an atheist, if he or she is an atheist, they have their own doctrines, their own principles.
You
to
mean
understand.
Artist, ART?
It is, no artist. Atheist, non-believers of God. Atheist. Non-believers of God.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah. So they have their own doctrines and principles. So they go with their doctrines and principles, right? So that's a different issue. But spirituality or religiosity is something which comes along with us, with our own culture, how we've been taught. So explain that to a person, I don't think it is as easy, or one can understand, because you have to experience it on your own.
Simply, he is a spiritual person. How would you describe spiritual person?
How to describe her?
I can introduce. He is very spiritual. How would you describe about spiritual me?
How do you explain one is spiritual?
No, that's what I said. Like you cannot explain that. Even I cannot explain that I am spiritual. I can just say I am a spiritual person, but it is shown in the way of actions, right? It is shown in the way of actions, how I move with people, how I talk, or what kind of religiosity that I practice, all those things. But I don't think that I'll be able to explain it to everybody that I'm spiritual.
If you could explain rationally, you were not spiritual.
I think this is a very important issue. If we have a religion, we can determine that the spirituality is a part of religion. But it is not explain everything, because we have discussed yesterday about the religion. As you belong to one religion, though, it is not determined that totally they have been living in that doctrine. Sometimes another good thing will be accepting, even though you are religion, you belong to one religion. Then my opinion is that what is spirituality is, as I introduced, the soul theory, S-O-U-L, the meaning same as a spirit. The soul is a sea. People can see very wide way without judgment. And all is people can observe very quietly to see good things. And you, the people who really understand deeply, instead of just vocabulary and also unverbal communication, may be able to accept it. And L is that very people have a listening ear, who may be able to not only work but also very humbly to learn themselves, to improve from others. So this is my understanding to explain what spiritual is, regardless of what religion have. So this is my understanding. Otherwise, it is very difficult to explain what spiritual may be confused by those who may not have a religion. But that's why we have to have a broader explanation of what spiritual is, even though people may not belong to the religion. This is my feel.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, just to add to what he was saying, my experience living in Japan is, Japanese people on the whole tend to be very non-religious. I mean, officially they may belong to, they may be associated with a Buddhist temple or a Shinto shrine, but many people, if you ask them, they're atheists. Japan, this is an interesting statistic, but in the world, Japan is the #1 country for people who trust science. Number 2 is China, number 1 is Japan. And many people, would claim that they have, no real religion. And that, I think, your point, which I really totally agree with, is that a lot of times spirituality can be detached from membership in a particular religion. In my own country, the United States, traditional religion is kind of disappearing. People don't associate with, a specific organized religion, because the organized religion tells them do this and don't do this, and believe this and don't believe this, and they get tired of that. But they can still be, trying to become spiritual. And I think even in Japan, though, we can see people that are, like that. They're not, formally religious, but they've got a sense of spirituality nonetheless, even though it's detached from membership in a particular religion.
I think, as I started saying that in India, this spirituality is coming up again now. This is what I meant to say. As you said, in a religion, there are certain doctrines. They say you do this, you don't do that. But it teaches what is good and what is bad. This is what we believe. So spirituality is also the same. And it is now, we try to bring in that into our own lifestyle. And I meant to say, like, when you are into spirituality and you are into such beliefs, you cope up with your stress and the other stuff, and you have a better mental health. This is what I mean to say.
Okay, Raphael?
I totally share your point of view. I find your paper enlightening. And just one question. In your opinion, a spiritual man or woman, a religious man or woman, can also mean a man who wants to discover the mysteries of realities, or to respect the mystery of reality, or has a mystical attitude to life, also if he does not share one particular faith, one particular religion?
No, discovering mysteries.
Discovering mystery of
sense
God.
The mystery of the reality, the sense of the transcendence.
Okay.
Sense of God. Also, it is not a Catholic Buddhist. Can I be a religious man without sharing one particular faith?
Without sharing?
One particular religion?
Okay. Yes, of course it is possible. It is not that you have to be into one particular religion to be a spiritual person. Spirituality is it's completely different. As he said, it's meant with the soul. He was talking about the soul even. So even we call it as Atma in Hinduism or in our own tradition. So as you said, it's not required.
I have a question for
Yes.
you. You said at the beginning of your talk, primitive religions such as worshipping fire,
Yes.
water, sun. So every morning I pray to the rising sun because I think that's the true source of energy in the world. And so, am I primitive? I'm a Christian who hopes, pray that I'll be reincarnated as a big tree. And that's my faith, and I pray to the rising sun. So here I'm, like you said, accepting many pieces, like India accepts many spirits and many gods, animistic. So I don't think, for me, animism is not primitive, but also advanced in terms of quantum physics, in terms of understanding. So how would you discuss that? It's interesting.
Yeah, thank you.
As a modern Hindu woman, what would you describe?
Thank you. So it is actually a primitive method. As I said, the idols came a little later. We had, maybe our ancestors have been praying to the sun, earth, fire and lightning. And we forgot all those things. We moved on to certain other aspects. And as I said, we are slowly moving back. I think yoga has the Surya Namaskar, right? Mm-hmm. So now this yoga has, it's been worldwide, you should say, and you start with a Surya Namaskar. So what you call praying sun god again, this is what we say, when you pray sun god, as you said, you get all energy in the morning. You need not have to be a Hindu, a Christian, a Muslim, or any religion for that matter, but praying sun god, or you do a Surya Namaskar, it's good for your health, and again, as we say, your mental being and your physical well-being.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
There's a movie, a clip was made about 45 years ago by a couple called The Power of 10. The Power of 10.
Okay.
By going out of the world with the power of 10, out to the outside of the. It's a very short movie, but it reflects upon what you said, the Atman and the Brahman, the wholeness, the oneness together. So in that sense, if one can understand the concept, one can easily be spiritual. Is that correct? When you talk about being spiritual.
Yes. Yes, ma'am, it is. Because when you understand, you understand
The
your
wholeness.
the
Yes.
wholeness. It is possible to understand what is on the whole, and you see everybody as one, right? So you are spreading love through that. So you understand people, you understand what's happening in the cosmos. So that's more important. It's possible. Yes, sir.
ரெண்டு கேஸ் விட்டுட்டீங்க முஸ்லிம்ஸ் ரெண்டு முஸ்லிம்ஸ்
Loud.
taken to the Supreme Court. No, I'm just saying.
No, loud.
Because she has not mentioned.
Loud and children.
Yeah. She has not mentioned two Muslims where one was from Hyderabad and the other one is from North India who came to Kerala. Both they had done something and they were taken to the Supreme Court and they were punished. Capital punishment was given to two Muslims.
But if a Hindu, they would not be capital punishment?
Capital punishment for Muslims. For the past 30 years, two people have been taken. Why she has not mentioned that? Because of their mentality. Why their mentality has changed and why they are behaving differently in
Why, who?
India.
The Supreme Court? Or whose mentality has changed?
Muslims.
Muslims.
Two of them. They were against India. I thought because she is a psychologist,
Case study of that.
because she is a psychologist, she would have taken from her daughter, she would have taken some laws, right? What has happened in Supreme Court. I thought she would have taken from, that is the reason why I thought, yeah, her daughter, who is a lawyer. So she knows what's happening and what had happened to the Muslims. You can Google Chrome, you can go into that and find out how two people went.
Since you've been talking mostly on the articles and the laws, I didn't want to get myself into the laws.
No, you should have given at least two.
Yeah.
Why
In the
two
case
Muslims were given capital punishment? Because they had gone against India, they had gone against Hinduism.
Daniel?
Yes,
Yes.
we were talking about religion and spirituality, and we haven't been defining them apart. And I think we should, because religion also consists of claims to truth, to absolute truth. Now, within religion, within this framework of claims to absolute truth, people can find their spiritual path. But the spiritual path itself, I think, doesn't necessarily go with claims for absolute truth. Absolute truth in the sense of alienating other paths to truth or other aspirations to truth. And spirituality, in the narrow sense, I believe, is a personal sense of having a kind of relation to this or that truth, whatever that truth may be called, and whatever understanding I could make of that truth myself. For example, I know many of my friends, and including myself, who felt they've undergone spiritual experience, or well, could call it in different terms, and they know they sense something which could not be described, for example, in narrow atheistic terms, or in narrow brain science. They felt connected to something else. This feeling does not necessarily be put into exact words. The question is, do we confine these feelings and these aspirations to certain claims of truth or not? These aspirations do not need to contradict one another, even if they are different. Claims to truth necessarily contradict if they are not being framed from the beginning under pluralist framework. You can comment on that.
Was exactly what I mean.
I know. I followed your words. I know. You're right.
Chair?
Yeah. So, as you said, you have to experience, right, spirituality. So, rather than explaining it, experiencing it will give you a better understanding. And all those contradictions about the truth and the other stuff that you say, I've been telling, religion and science are interrelated. There is a connectivity, right? So that the truth about religion, or the truth about spirituality, or truth about science has to be understood in the correct way. So that helps us to move better.
Thank you.
I have a couple of comments and questions based on that. Because Daniel's comment and Raphael's comment, first, if you come back to your presentation, you mentioned that one of the advantages of the interreligious understanding in India is acceptance of many gods and spirits. So if we start from that, we accept many gods and many spirits, then we're not judgmental that there doesn't need to be an absolute truth. So in Daniel's sense, coming from the understanding in the Middle East at the moment, there's often they believe that their religion is the absolute truth. They have chosen people, or this is the last prophet, and so on. And it's interesting because if you don't believe in exclusivity, so as Richard mentioned, in Japan, many people belong to a temple, but they also belong to a shrine. So, you know, on the last day of the year, they go to the temple, and the first day of the year, they go to the shrine, the same people. And so this is not a problem. And so why there's many people, okay, well, Jesus Christ can be another spirit, it's fine. It can be many spirits. Why not Muhammad? Okay, Muhammad, and they misunderstand. Maybe he can be a spirit, not just a prophet. And, there's no reason to exclude. So this exclusivity of religion is one of the problems for violence and war. Because then it thinks we think we're absolute. We have a special telephone to God, and we can talk to God, and we supreme. So I think that's one of the causes related to the theme of the conference. The broken world may be because of confusion and belief. See, it's confusion for me because I may believe in multiple paths of religion. Okay, but for a person who's believing in exclusivity of a religion, then they may think I'm mistaken. Okay. But in our world, which is broken in that sense because of interreligious intolerance. But in every country, whether it be India or in Japan or in America, you find secular attacks against different religious followers because people are believing are exclusive or they have. And so this is something which the paper needs, is very important for. And I think embracing the wisdom of many traditions, many spiritual traditions. When we had a question yesterday on obligations and duties, and also on religion and culture, when it came to the do's, Sendo, Bushido, and Dokyo, if these are different. But if our religion is a culture, and if our culture is mandalized means, mandalization means we take a little from every culture. You can buy sushi in Paris, you can buy French food in a Japanese restaurant, and you can have Indian curry for breakfast, but modified. So this mandalization of religion is also interesting for our world. And then we have many sects, so-called sects, new religious styles. So, the Baha'i faith is interesting as quite a successful experiment in merging religions. It's going to be interesting in our future. And then so we have religion and culture, and then we have something like meditation and yoga, which are not linked to one religion. You have mindfulness techniques in many religions, and then atheists as well who use mindfulness. So that aspect of spirituality and religion, I think, was very interesting. Maybe I give you some closing comments, and then how do you reflect on that?
Thank you.
On this question of spirituality, religion, exclusivity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, as you were talking about the marginalization of religion, you say, I would like to suggest or say that anything good from any religion or any culture has to be accepted. Right? Yeah. Anything good in any religion or any culture can be accepted. It's not that I am a Hindu, I will not take up what Christianity says or what Buddhism says. No, that's not the right attitude of a person. So anything good. I follow one religion as per my family or my culture or whatever it is. But still, if I find something good in other religion or other culture, I can take up that too. So there is no point of excluding something or excluding a culture or excluding a religion, right? So as I would again say, spirituality can only be experienced, and finally for the mental well-being, as he was talking about, yoga and meditation, it has no religion. No. Initially it was like that. Initially people felt that this yoga or meditation can be carried out or can be learned only by certain people, or only by certain people belong to certain religion, but it's not so. It has no religion. It has no religion actually. Yes?
Yeah, one more comment on that. Another way to go about this, about 20 years ago or so, I was in contact with a guy named William Johnston, and he was a Jesuit at Sophia University, so he was Catholic, and he was exploring connections between Catholicism and Buddhism, and he had a very interesting perspective on this. He said, when you talk about spirituality, there's a temptation to say that, Indian yoga and Japanese, Zen and American Christian prayer are all, the same type of spirituality. And that's not exactly true, because there are differences between the spiritualities that you find in different traditions. Right. Well, his point that I thought was really interesting is, he said that, as a practitioner of Catholicism, he engages in contemplative prayer. And contemplative prayer is being in the presence of God, right, with no difference between himself and God, and there's no words to describe it. And then he says, right, when he does Zen, which is the Japanese, Buddhist form of meditation, he said he's in exactly the same mind. So the point is, we can talk about different traditions, but for him, as an individual, the experience is the same, and he can describe that in Christian terms as being in the presence of God, or he can describe that in Buddhist terms as being, the non-duality of, of nothingness and nothingness, whatever, right? But he can describe it in two different ways, even though the experience itself is the same. And I think, as individuals, we can draw, like you said, the good things from every religion. There's different ways of interpreting that, but the main thing is, that we want the experience of wholeness and getting well and being able to find out what we're doing.
Thank you. So, thank you for your talk. Amen, we can say. Thank you.
Amen.